Okay, so let's talk about where your body water is and how materials are exchanged between the different fluid compartments in your body. So here we have a cell and we have a blood vessel, and in that blood vessel is a red blood cell here, and the plasma is the watery portion of the blood. So the blood makes up one of our fluid compartments, and we also have some lungs over here. So let's start with our cell. We know that as we go through metabolism, one of the byproducts of that is carbon dioxide. So here's some carbon dioxide being made, and it is made in the watery portion of the cell called the intracellular fluid, actually inside the mitochondria, but the compartment is the intracellular fluid. So ICF equals intracellular, intra meaning inside, intracellular fluid. Then the CO2 diffuses out of the cell by simple diffusion. It can just diffuse right through that plasma membrane into the next portion, watery compartment we want to talk about, which is the interstitial fluid, or ISF. Interstitial fluid is the fluid that is between all of your cells and in between your blood vessels and cells. So interstitial fluid. After the CO2 diffuses into the interstitial fluid, it then has to diffuse into the plasma, so it has to cross the membranes of these cells lining the blood vessels. Then it travels through the plasma until it reaches the lungs, and then it leaves the blood and goes into the lungs where we breathe that CO2 out. So here's CO2 entering the lungs. So we also breathe in fresh oxygen, and so we can trace how oxygen gets into your body cells. It follows the path in the opposite direction. So oxygen enters the lungs, passes into the blood, and again, oxygen is small and lipid soluble like CO2, so it just diffuses across plasma membranes into the interstitial fluid and then into those working cells that need the oxygen. So in order for exchanges of materials to occur, then anything that's leaving a cell has to pass first through some interstitial fluid before it goes into the plasma. And similarly, any materials that are going from the plasma to cells always have to pass first through some interstitial fluid. There's actually hardly any interstitial fluid between the lungs and the blood vessels because the membranes of these capillary cells are fused with the membranes of the lungs, but I just kind of exaggerated the space there. So where do you think most of your body water is? Well, if you've read your notes, you probably know that most of it is inside the cells and that about 67% actually is in this intracellular fluid. I'll just write that there, 67%. And that only about 8% is in the plasma, and that leaves about 25% in the interstitial fluid. So we can collectively call the intracellular or the interstitial fluid and the plasma extracellular fluid because it's all of the fluid that is outside the cells. So this ISF plus plasma is extracellular fluid. So that's everything that's not inside the cells. And that is where your body water is.